Hello my little beauties. Welcome to this video which has the interesting title Emergency Podcast. I picked that up from Andrew Tate, by the way, regarding the Trongate website. A special ahoy to Apache who joins us, Dan Stuff and Moho Scripting. Very nice to see you folks. Welcome one and all. I hope you're all doing fine. Now, I'd like to tell you about something that happened precisely 7 days ago, right here. I think you'll find this to be interesting, just as we get settled in, you know. I had been working on the Trongate desktop app. Look at that hair. It's perfect. There we go. I had been working on the Trongate desktop app, and I had a question of some sort, some decision to be made. What the decision was, it doesn't really matter. But I tried a little experiment, and I'm sure it's an experiment that some of you folks have tried. I thought to myself, what would Steve Jobs do? He was pretty good at making decisions, right? And so I thought to myself, I'm gonna get some AI bots, and I'm gonna present this problem to do with the desktop app, and then I'm gonna say, what would Steve Jobs do? What would his decision be in this situation? And eventually I got two bots. One of them was ChatGPT. It doesn't matter what they were. But I wrote out the whole thing. And it was a problem to do with the desktop app. And I submitted to one AI bot, and I says, what would Steve Jobs say? And then I submitted to another, and I says, what would Steve Jobs say? And the responses were really interesting. The first bot responded with something that was a bit like this. Thank you very much for your email. I really appreciate what you've been doing, and it sounds like you're doing a really great job with your desktop app. It's not easy building desktop apps, but with hard work and perseverance, I'm absolutely sure you'll get there in the end. Anyway, I think you should probably keep on moving forward, and some of these things may have to be tested, but in any event, good for you, and tally-ho, yours sincerely, Steve Jobs. That was the response from the first bot. I went to the second bot, same question. And I'll never forget how it responded. Remember, I had been asking some question about the Trongate desktop app. Should I do this or should I do that? And I will never forget the response that this AI bot gave me as long as I live. The second bot said, it sounds as if you are trying to polish a turd. People have already spoken with their feet. They haven't downloaded the desktop app. Abandon it last week. It's a piece of crap. Yours sincerely, Steve Jobs. These two responses could not have been more contrasting. And the question is, what was going on there? Which of the two bots was giving us a more accurate representation of Steve Jobs? Well, I've thought about this, and I think the answer is both of them in a strange way. I think if Steve Jobs had received an email from some little fanboy that he never knew, some perfect stranger, and this person had asked for advice, I can well imagine that a guy like Steve Jobs would respond by saying, hey, good work and keep it going, you're doing great, that's fabulous. But if Steve Jobs was speaking to somebody that he knew, maybe one of the engineers or some other colleague or something like that, somebody that he had been in the trenches with, based on everything I've read, I'm pretty sure that Steve Jobs would have responded in that other, somewhat, is the word abrasive, more abrasive manner. So both of them were right. And what I've come to realise in life is that all of us are guilty, almost all, are guilty of serving the planet Earth with that first version, the nice one. And that's nice. It's well-intentioned. It's something that comes from a place of goodness. And sometimes that type of thing can make people feel good in the short term. But as a strategy for popularity, it fails. As a strategy for getting stuff done, it really fails. Needless to say, I decided to take on board the second Steve Jobs. I decided, let's just ditch the darn thing. That's the Steve Jobs that I would like to talk to. Not the buttering up, oh, yeah, well done, yay, great job, you. Well done. I don't want that version of Steve Jobs. I want the real Steve Jobs. Now, that's my little introduction. So let me say a few words about... Code Monkeys is here. Ahoy to you, Code Monkeys, and Keith. I'm glad Keith is here. Because Keith, I don't know Keith. But Keith sent me an email, I believe it was today actually, where he very kindly sent me some code that he's been using pertaining to PHP. And he has been good enough to show me some things that he's been doing with regards to how he structures his web applications. And I think he sent me about 7 files. Now, do you have, and again, Keith is here. Hello, Keith. Keith and everyone, do you have any idea how easy it would be for me to say, thanks for sending those files in. I really appreciate it. Great job, Keith. Thanks a lot. It looks like you're doing some really cool stuff. I'm going to take that on board, and I'm sure there's going to be a few ideas there that we can incorporate. So thanks a lot, Keith. Have a great weekend. Do you have any idea how easy it would be for me to respond like that? And if I responded like that, I'm sure he would smile and we'd all feel great for about 10 minutes. But instead, this is how I responded, isn't it, Keith? I said, thanks a lot for your files. I'm really grateful. Rather than blurting out some knee-jerk reaction and saying your code's good, I'd like to take some time to look at the code carefully and honestly, actually. I don't know how long that process will take, maybe Wednesday or Thursday, but I'm going to really look at it. And I'm probably going to come back and say there's holes all over this code. I mean, even just at a glance, I can see that he was mixing camel case with snake case in his method names. Just at a glance, right? So heaven knows what other holes I'm going to find in it if I give it a solid 4 hours of my time. And I says, I'm just letting you know that, Keith, If I come back in so many days' time and I say, well, the code's okay, but I don't know if I like this, and this, and I think you could do this better. I said, know this. If that's the type of response that comes in, you do realize that that's actually an indication of respect. And I don't really know Keith, to be honest. I think we've had like one email, maybe two. But I believe that Keith is intelligent enough to appreciate that. And if you agree, Keith, I'd be very grateful if you could type the word I. So sometimes the most respectful thing you can do to another human being is to conduct yourself honestly and authentically. Now, we don't want to be rude. I'm not on a crusade to harm the self-esteem of anyone. And by the way, anybody who's thinking that this is a hit piece or something, you'll be disappointed. I'm not going to be naming anyone, or at least the particular person who I think has been guilty of unsavoury conduct. I will not name that person. I'll instead take steps to make sure that person retains dignity. And maybe if I'm really smart, I'll leave a little sort of avenue so that that person can perhaps adjust his behaviour and come back. Just maybe. Thank you very much, Keith. He types I. Intelligent people get this. And Keith, you've just told me that you're an intelligent person. Now, let's talk a little bit about what happened and why I'm here and why this video's got this interesting title. The short version of events, very short in one sentence, is somebody said some stuff I disagreed with on the discussion forum. Last night, I thought about it. As I was walking home, I thought, I'm going to ban him. And I hit stream. And I did a stream that was deleted within half a minute of it going up. And if you missed that stream, it basically came in a few parts. But the first part was, you're all great and everything, but this really bugs me. I'm going to ban this guy. I'm pretty angry. That was last night's stream. It's never a good idea to suddenly, when you're walking down the road soaked, to go like that. Hey, it never works out. But nevertheless, I had some time to think about it. And I've come to the conclusion that I'm not going to ban anyone. I'm going to take down the whole goddamn forum. And yes, the power is quite intoxicating, let me tell you. Oh, the power. So I'm going to tell you about the whole damn thing. All of it. And there is not one single person out there, not even my worst enemy, who's going to say, DC's on some kind of power trip. He's really lost the plot this time. Nobody's going to say that. And this is the look of confidence. So let's talk about what happened and why I'm doing the things I'm doing. So, as you know, for about the past 5 or 6 years, I've had this framework called the Trongate framework. It hasn't really been as popular as I would have liked. In fact, I would be surprised if there's more than 5 people on the planet Earth who even care about the stuff I'm talking about here. Those 5 people being those who have contributed to the forum. But when you build a framework that does everything differently, and when you declare bullshit on an entire industry, rewrite culture, bullshit, third-party interversion dependency, bullshit, and so on. I could go on and on. When you do that, the funny thing is, you don't get invited to any conferences. You don't get a mention on PHP News. You don't get people like Traversy saying, hey, check out this framework from the crazy guy who says bullshit a lot. No, it doesn't happen. Instead, you get tumbleweeds. Now, don't get me wrong, we have a few friends on board, and that's fantastic. But I'm not going to be delusional or dishonest about any of this. Trongate just hasn't hit the mark, and I am responsible. But in any event, I'm still here, I'm still coding, and I'm not going anywhere. Even if I'm the only person in the world using the darn thing, then so be it, you know? It's fine. We'll be okay. So in any event, I had this forum on the Trongate website. Somebody told me it was a good thing to have. I think it was. And I never really contributed to it too much. Along with the rest of the human race, by the way. But I've never really got on with forums. I think the problem is me. So I generally decided I won't get too involved in this forum. I've got other things to do, and very fortunately, extremely fortunately, we've had people like Simon and Dan, who's here today, going on and answering questions and helping people. And where on earth would we be without them? The gratitude knows no limits. So I've been very lucky because I've been able to get on with my life and generally not worry about this discussion forum. And quite frankly, there's many times when others will answer questions in a far better manner than I could, you know. In fact, just last week, Simon submitted a pull request based on something that had come up, and it was some little fix, and I would never have caught this thing. Yeah, but it was to do with, I can't even remember, routing or something. But the point is that what they've done has been massively, massively valued, and I've said this over and over and over again. I'm happy to say it again. If it was not for Simon, there would not be a Trongate framework. I mean, it's as direct as that, you know. Now, Dan's a little bit newer to the picture, and we have others, of course. I see Keith, and Code Monkey has been busy, etc. What you guys have done is massively valuable. I get that. But let me talk about the soap opera, and I'm going to talk a little bit about what irritated me. Funnily enough, it's not what most people would think. Some of you may know that a few days ago, there was a little discussion about Trongate version 2. And somebody who I will refer to as the guy said in a thread that the decision to not tether Trongate to a third-party CSS framework, namely Tailwind, by the way, which I think is on version 4 or 5. This person said that the decision to not tether Trongate to that particular CSS framework is, and I quote, deeply flawed. Now, nobody has to agree with me about everything. I actually kind of respect people who can think for themselves. Well, not kind of, I do. But the English language could not have come up with a stronger objection. I'm deeply flawed, folks. I'm deeply flawed. Now, I don't know if you've ever heard of the Ye2 framework. The Ye2 framework is an excellent framework. I mean, it's one of the best. I love it. It's fast. It's got tons of features. It's the way that they write the code. I've looked at the code base. It's so economical. I took tons of ideas, by the way, from Ye2. I love that framework. Well, I had an email from one of the founders of Ye2. I believe there's 2 people who were heavily involved with that. And it was actually a few years ago that this email came in. And one of the co-founders of that framework got in touch and said, you know, your decision to make Trongate work without these CSS libraries is actually a pretty good decision, you know. I said, I know. And he said, we built Ye2, the admin panel, so that it is tethered to a certain version of Bootstrap. And I said, I know. And he says, and that version of Bootstrap's now out of date. And I thought, I know. Have you ever seen the upgrade guide for Ye2 to switch to the current version of Bootstrap? Now, I haven't looked at this for a few years, but it was on the web for a while. And it was like, okay, you have Ye2? Congratulations. Here's what you need to do to get the whole thing working with the latest Bootstrap. And it was a nightmare. That whole framework is ruined. Quite literally. Not because of some PHP code or some architectural decision. No. It's ruined because they tethered it to a version of Bootstrap that is now prehistoric. Now, by the way, I haven't checked in on Ye for the past year or 2. Maybe they've somehow fixed that or got their act together. If that's the case, congratulations. But they went through a ton of pain. And I had the email from the co-founder himself. And so now, here's somebody who thinks we should do the same. Now, I'm not here to attack Tailwind. Congratulations, Tailwind. It's not about attacking Tailwind. It's about the very reasonable premise that a PHP framework should be able to stand on its own without being tethered to some third-party library. I assume that 50% of you probably think that's a good idea. And 50% of you probably think that's a rubbish idea. Maybe you look at frameworks like Laravel and you say, well, they use Tailwind and worked out well for them. I get it. All perfectly valid. But I don't think any of you would have the nerve to come and say, oh, your thinking is deeply flawed. Nevertheless, as irritating as that is, alternative opinions must be respected. And they are respected. Now, when that little moment, that little conversational exchange happened on the forum, I was obviously slightly irritated. And if somebody's going to say that I'm deeply flawed or my thinking's deeply flawed, that's fantastic. But I assume that we now have a license to speak honestly. In any event, my good friend Simon appeared and he left a post. And it was the most diplomatic and well-intentioned comment that you could ever imagine. Simon appeared and he says, look, DC, What you've done for this framework is great, you know. You're great. And we're really glad you're here. I mean, he could not have been nicer. And then he said, and as for other guy, you're really great too, you know. We're so glad to have you here. And the things you're building are amazing and it's fabulous. And God, I'm so glad you're here. And then the post concluded with basically, so in conclusion, can't we all get along? It was a beautiful post. And I would expect no less from such a kind and compassionate and intelligent person. But what I learned in hindsight is that it was actually an erroneous response. Why? Well, a little technicality here. Remember I was talking about the compliments? I got a whole bunch of compliments. And so did the guy. Well, I kind of decided I'm done with this forum. But I did click the little like button. Don't you know? I clicked the little like because I like it when people say nice things. I appreciate the intention. I appreciate the diplomacy. I love the strategy. I clicked that little like button. And then I moved on. Do you think the guy clicked the like button? Do you think he left a little comment saying, hey, thanks for saying all of that great stuff? Thanks, man. I appreciate that. Do you think he did that? No. Instead, the very next day, he came back and he created a thread that went something like this from memory. Headline. Now I don't have it in front of me, and there was a typo in it. It doesn't matter, but it was something like, would you, I should get the headline in front of me here, shouldn't I? It was, oh yeah, here we go. An installer for modules. Would you want one? And when you read the thread, which I did, I noticed that it was something like the following. Now, forgive me, because I am going to probably misrepresent the thread here, but it was something like this. Okay, folks, so I've been working on this thing for quite a while now. Now, listen, I've been wondering actually, when you install your modules, do you think we should be installing them to the root or the public directory? I really don't know. Now, there's gonna obviously have to be some sort of licensing agreements here. We can't expect this kind of thing to be free, but nevertheless, I think it could be a good addition to the module market. So I don't know whether we should do this or that. Please let me know in the comments, or forever hold your peace. That's pretty much how it read. Pretty much. Maybe a 50% accurate representation. Interestingly, Dan had responded and says, I don't like your idea. In so many words. I never responded. I just looked and thought, wow. And then suddenly I started looking at the posts that had been left by the guy. Now, I told you that I never really bothered with the forum. I wasn't in the habit of keeping an eye on it and everything. I'm just too busy. But I took the time and I took a look at some of the posts that the guy had left as of late. And I noticed that there was this word that kept appearing over and over and over. And the word was license or licensing, right? In other words, paid product. Let me be very clear about something. If somebody out there builds something and they get rich, I'm going to be cheering them on. There's nothing wrong with that. If somebody out there somehow does something with the Trongate framework and they become hugely rich and successful. The only thing I would ask is, could you please send me a photograph of your Lamborghini when you get it? That's it. And unlike normal people, I'm not the kind of guy that would say, oh, you cannot promote your stuff here and not all of that. On the contrary, I'd like to provide a means for people to feel encouraged to do that type of stuff. It's good. It's entrepreneurialism. It's exactly what we need. I love it. I cannot stress that enough. The problem is, I believe that this person was misleading people into thinking that he somehow represented the voice of the framework. Now, this all sounds like I'm building up to a big old egotistical thing. I am the voice of the framework. That's not where I'm going. Hear me out. If I'm reading his posts and I'm going, what the heck did I just read? Can you imagine how it would work out if somebody who's brand new to the framework comes along and they say, oh, let me check out this thing called Trongate, and they look on this forum and over and over and over again, they see the guy saying, hey, folks, right, we're doing this, our license agreement. Well, you're going to have to pay. You're going to have to pay. I'm telling you, you're going to have to pay. Oh, you know you're going to have to pay. Anybody who sees that is going to run a mile. And I don't blame them. The truth of the matter is, Trongate is a very simple, free, and open source framework. There is no upsell. There's no plans to have an upsell. Sure, there's a little thing called the module market, which is in a completely unfinished rubbish state and has brought in a grand total of, let me see, I'll round it to the nearest integer. Oh, 0. Yeah, well, there's that. But there's nothing else. There's no plans. There's no, you're all going to have to pay. I'm not holding meetings and saying, hey, everybody, how are we going to get them paying this license, How are we going to get them to pay? Those conversations are simply not happening. Now, if the guy had said in those messages, by the way, folks, just to let you know, I'm speaking about my own personal projects here, just to let you know. If he had said that, we wouldn't be here today. It would have been fantastic. But that's not what he did. And some of you, I can almost hear you. You're looking at the screen right now, and you're thinking, you're a bit paranoid, DC. He's not misleading people. I mean, if you read the post, read it carefully. It's very clear he's speaking about his own thing. I'm sure there's one or two of you who might be thinking that. So just in case anyone is thinking that, I wonder if I can show you screenshots here. Because here's a title from a recent thread. And I quote, SQLite support has been added to the Trongate framework. That's the title of the thread. Now, I'm not going to read the whole thread here. I suppose it doesn't matter too much because the headline says it all. But just to give you a couple of extracts, starts off with, given that there's now a Trongate version 2, and given that blah, 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 this is not fully tested yet, but the basics do work, and blah, 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 blah. Now, this bit actually made me laugh coming up. This bit made me laugh out loud last night. And it made me realize that, hallelujah, Simon's coming back. He says, and I'm reading, the only other change is in the database.php config, which now allows for SQLite. Now remember, he's talking about his project. And then he says, in point of fact, that now effectively makes SQLite the default. Are you paying attention? So here we have somebody posting something on the forum, and I'm quoting word for word. SQLite support has been added to the Trongate framework. And in that post, he has the audacity to say that SQLite is now the default. It's now the default database. Oh, gee. Can you imagine? Can you imagine? Like, it's like me going into the Laravel forum and saying, great news, guys. Oracle is now the default database for Laravel. Can you imagine how that would go down? In any normal place, and I don't need validation. I do not require any comment from people saying, oh, I agree with you. No validation is required. That is ridiculous, preposterous content that is misleading. I happen to think it's misleading by design. Maybe I'm wrong about that. I don't know. But the fact of the matter is, this is a complete misrepresentation of the framework. By the way, I would love for Trongate to be compatible with SQLite. I love that idea. Who would not love that idea? That's a fantastic idea. I love it. Maybe someday we'll be lucky enough to have that. But in the meantime, please don't go on the forum and make declarations about Trongate now has SQLite. Oh, and by the way, that's now the default. Again, can you imagine some newcomer saying, I'll have a look at this framework, and they see that, and they say, what the heck, I'm out of here. And of course, PHP databases usually use MySQL or MariaDB by default, as you know. So the whole thing is just ridiculous. And what's most ridiculous of all is that whenever these posts appear, it's usually me or Simon. Simon is the posh version. It's usually me or Simon who respond, and we say, oh, great ideas, man. Really great. You know, you're working on some good things here, and keep on going. Keep on going, and we salute you. That's how we respond. It's how I respond, you know. It's certainly how Simon responds. You know, the guy sent me an email about half an hour before I came on. And I'm not going to cause embarrassment by reading the email out. But the email was a plea for reconciliation. The email said something like, I know that you and I may have had our issues, but I don't think it's fair that you take this out on Simon, you know. Rah, rah, rah. And I thought, in fact, I actually said in the email, the only thing that Simon is guilty of is precisely the same thing that I am guilty of. Humouring you. Once again, I said it last night in my impromptu live stream. When Simon decided to play the part of Kofi Annan, the peacemaker, and do a good old paragraph dishing lavish praise upon me, and then another paragraph about how great the guy is, that's fantastic. The problem is, anyone reading that would be forgiven for assuming that the guy and me have some kind of Lennon and McCartney type relationship. I was saying this last night and I was right. Anybody reading that would be thinking, all right, okay, well, some people like red and some people like blue. I guess we all just have to get along. And I'm just not playing along with this because it's preposterous. I'm just not doing it. And I'm not saying that I'm better than anyone as a human being. And I'm not saying that things can't change or anything like that. I'm not in the business of, damaging the self-esteem of anybody. But there has to be, at some point, a little reality check. If we were to count all of the lines of code in the Trongate ecosystem, all of the lines of code, and say what percentage was made by the guy and what percentage was made by him, and let's count everybody else, let's count every other contributor. There's about 17 of them. I don't know what percent I'm personally responsible for. But if it was less than 98%, I'd be astonished. I have worked my arse off on this thing. And you expect me to quietly sit back and go, oh well, we have SQLite added, Yay! Oh, I guess I'm deeply flawed. I guess I'll just scuttle back into my little hole there. How dare I have an idea about not tethering the framework to a third-party library? Folks, I'm just not playing along. I am not participating in National Humour and Asshole Week. I'm not doing it. I'm really not. And if that means, and by the way, I had an email from Simon in which he says, he's exhausted by the whole thing and he's stepping back from the project. I hope Simon comes back. I hope the forum comes back, maybe in a slightly different form. The truth is, I think that the thing has massive value as a technical support forum, but I think it has zero value as a platform for the guy's business ideas. Nobody's interested. So I would love to bring it back. And I really hope that we can have a bit of sanity here. But if that doesn't happen, if we end up in a situation where I've lost everybody and I'm the only one left here, and everybody else is gone, then that's okay. I'm okay with it, I'm kind of quite good at building stuff on my own anyway, actually. So be it. And if any of this sounds a little bit abrupt or poorly thought out, let me tell you what it was, the straw that broke the camel's back. Remember how I was saying that the guy keeps on posting this stuff, babbling on about licenses and paid plans and all sorts of shit. We've now got SQLite, that's the default. This misleading, I'm going to say misleading by design, crap over and over and over again. I thought to myself, what's a really super cool way of dealing with this? And I came up with this idea, and the idea was that, let me switch the heater off, hold on. The idea I had was, maybe we could have like a thing whereby when somebody submits a forum post and it says, hey, everybody, Trongate now has this or whatever, maybe we could have a little AI bot that checks it and says, look, can you please add a little sentence and clarify that this is for your own personal project? Would that be okay? And I thought that would be a cool thing to build. And I spent quite a bit of time. I do a lot of walking, and I was talking to the AI bots planning this. I'm saying, I'm going to build this AI bot, and that'll be cool. And then I won't need to worry about it. Because if somebody promotes their stuff, fantastic, promote away. All we ask is a little sentence that says, just to let you know I'm speaking about my own personal projects. I thought that'll be beautiful. And I thought, how long would it take me to build that? And I figured probably about 2 or 3 weeks. And I was planning. And then last night, I mentioned the whole thing to a family member who knows nothing about coding. And this family member said, what the hell are you playing at? You're about to spend 2-3 weeks building some elaborate AI app because nobody has the confidence to just behave normally. And I would insist that it's normal behavior to just say, hey, if you're going to push your products, could you please stress that this is for your own personal project? It's all we're asking. There's nothing about that that should be controversial or offensive or anything. But somehow, we've all become so pussified that nobody's willing to say these things. Instead, we all creep around being offended like a bunch of Ponzi hairdressers. Well, this channel, believe it or not, has gone through a couple of different phases. I started off thinking I could have a marketing channel, a while ago. And then at some point I moved on to web development. Maybe it's time for a new chapter for this channel. Maybe it's time to awaken the bastard within. That bastard is within all of us. It's within you. And I think that life would be better if we all just conducted ourselves in a more authentic manner. To be clear, the only person who's really guilty of doing anything wrong is me. Instead of saying to the guy, oh, great idea, oh, you're SQLite, yeah, 3 cheers for you, oh, you're such a great guy, you're such a great developer. Instead of doing that, I should have said, if you're going to speak about your projects, could you please just clarify that this is for your own personal projects? Thank you. Have a nice day. That's what I should have said. And I'm also no longer impressed by big lengthy speeches about how we all deeply respect each other. It kind of goes without say at this point, Kind of goes without say. So I'm going to be dispensing with the bullshit. DC has arrived and DC has spoken. All right, that's me. I'm done. If there are any questions or comments or suggestions, this is your chance. I'll read a few comments while I'm here. We do have a few. But if you have any other questions, comments, or suggestions, go ahead. It's fine. So, Tony Green, thank you. He says, I use it and love it. I wonder if he means the SQL manager. Thank you, Tony Green. Dan Stuff here says, That's because the guy does not understand the vision. Keep it simple and fast. Absolutely. I mean, there is another version of Trongate coming, you probably heard. But for anybody who's wondering, I'm not interested in adding stuff. I want to take stuff away. I want to remove everything that is not essential, and I want to make this the fastest and most simple, easy to use framework on the face of this earth. And by the way, if Keith is still here, I have a news flash for you, Keith. You know that code that you sent me? That conversation is probably not going to go the way that you think. I don't mean I'm going to say that your code's rubbish. No. That conversation is going to end with you using the Trongate framework. I am on a mission of conversion. And even if we have to talk on the phone and maybe go through a few details, even if I have to say, look, what would it take to get you on board with this? We'll do it. But that's how that conversation ends. All right. Well, I think that's about me. And it's ahoy to Cal who came in there. Is that a new name? Maybe. I don't know. So that's pretty much. Thank you, Tony. He says, I mean Trongate. Thank you, my friend. I do appreciate it. Yeah, I do hope that, we can have some sort of normality here. I think that there is huge value in having a place where people can ask for technical support and get help. There's no question that that's a really good resource to have. I'm just no longer willing to humour this horseshit, quite frankly. And I'll say to you in public what I've said in private. If Simon wants the forum data or anything, that's fine. If anybody wants to fork the Trongate framework, that's fine as well. We have the MIT license. Have you ever read the MIT license? It's basically, you can take the thing, do whatever you want with it, and all we ask is that you give us a little mention in the somewhere where nobody looks. Go check it. It's all there. So if anybody wants to do that, it's fine. I'm not going to stand in anybody's way. What a beautiful day, folks, eh? What a beautiful day. Now we are having a conversation. All right. Tony Green says, are we going to have to rewrite all of our current projects to use version 2? No, you're not, Tony. In fact, I'm either going to do one of the following two things, maybe two of them. I'm either going to build an application, possibly a desktop application, that you just point it at your site, press a button, and it goes and it does all the stuff. And if that's not possible, I'm just going to make myself available, and I'll personally fix or guide you through the process for any of your projects. No charge. I think we are popular enough that I can get away with that, right? So you're going to be absolutely fine. You're not going to have to rewrite things at all. We're just simplifying things, So don't worry about it. It's going to be fine. All right. Well, thank you very much for that question. I think we're just about done here. Yeah, and I'm pretty satisfied with that. I don't think I'm, just for the future version of me looking back, can I speak to myself? Hey, DC, I don't think that you maliciously attacked the self-esteem of anyone. I think you conducted yourself in a reasonable manner, and congratulations, DC, for not mentioning the guy by name. That was okay. Thank you very much. I was just talking to my future self there. All right. Have a fantastic